Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Half Watt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard the Half Watt Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Brooks, and with me today are...
Gage Runkle.
And Tyler Clausen.
Well played, gentlemen. So these two are the shakers and movers of the podcast. I'm just simply the talent.
Good talent.
I don't know how true that is.
I don't know either. I'm coming off like a real clown, but Tyler approached me a couple of years ago about doing this, and he said, "Boy, I'd love to have you on my podcast." And I just put it in the back of my head, and I went, "Someday Tyler's going to invite me back." And then last week, I came into the studio, and this is a hell of a studio.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, he's done a fantastic job of building it from the ground up, and I mean, look at this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our audience can't, but I do appreciate what you guys are saying. I have spent a lot of time trying to get the studio professional and looking good, and I want people to feel comfortable in here.
You did really well. Like when I came in here the first time, I just went. I had no idea it was going to look like this, and it is really cool.
When my business partner and I first started, we started in his basement.
Yep,
and it's just like this really creepy basement out, and the house is out in the woods, like in the middle of nowhere. And he would invite people to come be on podcasts that we were doing, and I'm like, bro, we gotta get a space because we cannot keep inviting people out to the woods into the basement of a house. It's
not in Clackamas. No,
it's one of those houses where it is scary to take your trash cans to the curb.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Yeah. So so being here is really nice, and we've been in this space for 2 years now. We started in just this little room.
Oh, no kidding.
And then we've expanded out to the office area that you've seen and the producer area that I've created. And so it's been a lot of building up and just trying to do the right thing at the right time and work with the right people.
Your equipment is good. It sounds good. Other than my craggy voice, I can't stand. But
bro, I think that you're diving too hard on yourself. You sound great.
I just, it's like anything else. You hear your own voice, you're like, that can't be me.
Right?
It just can't be me. What did I sound like?
You were complimenting my voice, and I'm like,
you're well, because you sound like a. When I make like voice memos and send them to my buddies, I'm like, oh God, is that what I sound like? It's the weirdest thing, man. I want to sound like Sam Elliott or something.
Yeah, everyone wants to have that really iconic sound, but I think people need to start coming to the realization that you don't need a voice like that to just be able to and do a good job at speaking.
And Sam's listening to this podcast going, I just want to sound like Mike.
I just want a cold beer and to sound like Mike.
I just want a yellow jacket and to sound like Mike.
I'm not even going to try to do it.
But listening to the last couple episodes that you were talking on, I mean, you just talked in the first episode, you talked for like an hour straight, and it was just music. I mean, the moment you started talking, it was just like there was a tempo to it. It was worth listening to. And I compared it. I was talking to Gage at the time, and I was like, it's like Dan Carlin. Bro, what was that?
I don't know. My body burped without my
You're
consent.
so excited.
I'm so excited.
Adult beverage.
It's like listening to Dan Carlin when he talks about history. Like, he has a tempo to it. He has a cadence, and it's not like he's trying too hard to do anything. He's just talking.
Dan, I'm coming after you, buddy. Man, his podcast just took me.
Oh, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
I
couldn't get enough of his stuff, man.
I think that hardcore history got me through the first like 2 terms of the apprenticeship.
Did it?
Yeah, I went through the Armageddon, Blueprints for Armageddon.
I haven't listened to that yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I the Japanese, the one about the Pacific
World War II.
Yeah, I ate every one of those episodes up.
Yeah.
I mean, like minute by minute.
Blueprints for Armageddon was incredibly eye-opening.
Okay,
It's World War I, and it's insane. I mean, it's a college course look at this one moment in history.
You're the second person who's recommended that podcast. So,
it's fantastic. It's one of the biggest inspirations for what I'm trying to do here, just because it affected me so much that I want to be able to do that for other
Blueprint to
people.
Armageddon.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a person listening to our show and you haven't listened to Hardcore History, go check it out.
I got it.
And Dan Carlin, hit us up for, ad money.
Yeah, I mean, we're here, buddy. We're not going anywhere.
You're only in Eugene. Come on, man. Come on. Gage, tell us about yourself. Where'd you come from? Where are you at? What do you do?
Man, I'm from a little town in Washington called Cathlamet.
That's not a real place.
That's
no. Gage has made that up.
Well, just wait. Well, that place had I had, I think, 12 people in my grade.
Wow.
In kindergarten. But what's crazy is I actually didn't live in Cathlamet. I lived 20 minutes down the highway in Skamakaway, which is Native American for smoke on the water. And if you've ever been there in the morning, you can't see the water till noon because
no kidding.
Yeah, so much fog.
That's nuts.
Yeah. And then I moved to Virginia at a young age. Spent about 10 years in Virginia.
Did you really?
Yeah. Dad was in the Navy, and then I moved back to Washington when I was 18, because I wanted to spend a couple years around family before I joined the Navy, and then joined the Navy as a CB construction mechanic, and then I did like a year of active and then 5 reserves. I'm still in actually.
But you're still in reserve?
Yeah, for now at least.
Oh wow, I did not know that. I didn't know you're still in reserves. Huh.
Yeah, still. And then
thank you for your service. Thank you for your service,
thank
man.
you for your service.
Oh.
You throw.
I was a scope dope. That was easy.
Hey, well, I can't wait for you to tell the listeners about your throwing of the capacitors.
Oh my
Cash.
God, that was the worst. But we had a hell of a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and then I always wanted to either be an electrician or like a history teacher. Mm-hmm. So, I was like, I don't want to go get a bachelor's degree right now. So, hey, second choice, let's go and join the IEC and the rest is history. I've been electrician for 5 years now, journeyman for 2 years in Oregon, and I think about a year now in Washington.
And then you have an ISET too, or just do you have an ISET?
I'm an access control guy.
Okay, so you don't need. But in Washington, so you can't work in life safety up there. You have an ELO 6, but not the.
Right, I got the 06, but no ISET.
Do you want to do life safety?
I've thought about it, definitely, and I do want to branch out my skills. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, access control in itself it's a big animal, but I think I'm like finally actually like tackling. I'm a service tech already now, so I would love to get into some fire.
Nice.
Absolutely.
I love fire. Like I told Dave this. I said it's like having a partner to troubleshoot with. It
right.
really, really is.
Yeah.
Because it's always telling you what you've done wrong.
Yeah.
I'm still grounded.
I'm still grounded.
Why are you grounded? Why won't you just boot?
Did your fire panel just tell you have to sleep on the couch tonight? That's crazy.
As it should.
As it should.
Tyler, tell us about yourself.
I went to school for film and media. And this goes back to what you were saying.
I just found that out, by the
way. When you were talking to Dave in the other episode about like other people come into this trade and they have entire careers behind them. Mm-hmm. I was one of those people where I wanted to be a film director, and really the reason why I got into it is because I wanted to do like music videos. I grew up watching music videos, yeah. And I was like, this is dope. You get to hang out with barely clothed women and like film them, and it's okay.
Are there any barely clothed women here?
No, podcasting doesn't have barely clothed women.
Yeah.
Damn it.
But yeah, that was my dream, and so I went to film school, and there I learned a little bit of audio stuff, like one class, and then I learned one class worth of graphic design, and then after I got out, I couldn't find a job for the life of me to do video work. And eventually I just took some retail jobs, and I ended up getting a job as a t-shirt designer. So I did graphic design, and basically I call it like the fast food of graphic design. We'd have people come in and do a design in 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The Smack Doties of graphic design.
Just come in, we can do something real quick for you, and you can walk out with a t-shirt.
Okay.
That's how I learned.
That's a good business model, actually.
Yeah, it
was.
really
is.
Yeah, I like that.
And I would love to get back there someday, just because I enjoy that process. I enjoy making shirts. I don't know what it is. There's something cool about like having your design on a t-shirt.
Absolutely.
Like one of my favorites I ever did was I'm the middle son of 3, and my dad one time introduced me to a total stranger, and he was trying to say something to the effect of like my older brother and my younger brother, they got the slender genes in our family, the really lengthy genes. And Mike, you'd know Randy, he's a fighter. He's a slender guy.
I'm not gonna pick a fight with him. He knows his stuff, man.
And what my dad wanted to say was, unfortunately, Tyler got the stockier, bigger genes. And if you ever see Randy compared to me, it's very obvious, right? But what he realized halfway through his sentence is that he hadn't introduced me to this guy. So what he said was, unfortunately, this is my middle son, Tyler. and I have not let him live that down. And in fact, at my wedding,
that's funny,
I had a shirt made for him, and it was a picture of me and a really bad picture of me, and it said, "Unfortunately, this is my middle son, Tyler."
That is funny. That's
and
a good
he wore it
moniker,
to the wedding.
That's cool.
So like, I love doing that, and so. While I was doing that, I tried to get a job at a t-shirt shop, and the guy that owned it was a podcaster. I had no idea what that was. But he liked me enough, and for some reason he invited me on his show. I saw him plug 2 microphones into his phone, and he hit record, and we just talked for an hour. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. So I went to my older brother, who, he and I argued about comic books and video games and TV shows all the time. And I was like, let's record ourselves.
Is Randy your older brother?
Yeah.
So he's the oldest?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Randy, myself, and then my younger brother.
Okay. I don't think I've met him. So.
No, probably not.
Is he in prison?
No. I stole a mixing board from a friend. I grabbed some mics from my church. We didn't have any mic stands, so we stacked some books on top of each other, and we taped some cups to those books and put the microphones inside of those. And that was how we started. That was my first podcast.
At the janky house.
In the basement in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere.
You can still find those episodes on the internet, although I'm sure Randy wouldn't appreciate that because he doesn't want people to hear him talk.
So Randy is on there?
He is, yeah.
I'm coming after you. I'm coming after you, brother. Randy, I'm coming after those, man.
He eventually he stopped doing it because he had other stuff, and then whirlwind of stuff later. I tried to do the graphic design. I tried to do all that stuff. Eventually, I ended up. I had 2 different podcasts going on, and I was delivering furniture, and Randy finally sat me down and said, "Bro, I know you want to be all these things, book writer, graphic designer, podcaster. What you need to do is be someone who can provide for your family, and you need to stop breaking your body to do it." And he told me,
that's sage advice.
Yeah, he's like, you can make, as an electrician, you can make 3 times as much money, if not more, doing 1/3 the amount of work, if not less.
Oh yeah, those moving guys.
Yeah,
oh my god.
Yeah, and I mean, my knees still click when I walk. Like I messed my body up, and so I did. I finally I swallowed my ego, and I said, all right, this is what I want to do. I'm married. I want to have a kid, so I'm going to have a job at all times. I'm going to guarantee a job. I joined the apprenticeship, and within 3 months of getting a job in the apprenticeship, I realized I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. but
I'm going to die of copper poisoning.
But it was because I was being pushed, right? I was being pushed to do something and learn something, and so finally, after 3 years of doing that, I came out of it. I got my license, and I feel proud of myself for going after that, and then all the while, I'm building this business on the side and putting to use all the stuff I'm learning in the apprenticeship, all the low volt stuff, learning how to run wire, learning how to, build these things that I need to use for audio, and everything about it all started to come together. And so, and that's why I wanted to have a show that kind of explores the knowledge of being a technician.
I love that.
That intro was quite a bit better than mine. that was awesome.
Yeah,
You really took that.
Not so not so
A. Well, you know what?
C. I see.
We're still getting graded. Is that what's going to happen on the show?
Man.
Oh man.
I grade high for participation, Gage. I'm going to say right now, brother. So,
well, you know what? I'm sure that you will make up for me. Mike, tell me about yourself.
Well, so I'm from San Diego, not from the Northwest. I grew up in the shadow of the Navy and the Marine Corps, and I was one of those guys who loved the Navy. I just absolutely adored ships, everything about them. I wanted to get on them. I wanted to ride them. And then I seriously lived just south of Camp Pendleton. And
oh wow, that's where my wife's dad's at.
Seriously?
Yeah.
At Camp Pendleton?
Yep.
Yeah, I ran around that base as a kid because everybody's father was a Marine,
right?
And
yeah,
including my own. So I got to know the base and all that good stuff pretty well. And I took karate up there and started sparring with Marines. And
really?
Oh yeah, right at Oceanside at Tongsudo Midakwan Studio. And anyway, I went through high school and barely got out of it in one piece. I think my highest grades were in choir and photography, and that was it. And then I don't tell people I lived in Louisiana. I tell people I did time there.
That's perfect.
My dad was working at a nuke plant. That's why I lived in Oceanside, because he worked at San Onofre, which was a nuke plant up there. And we moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so he could work at River Bend, which is up on the Mississippi. And so I lived in Louisiana for a year, and it ate me up and spit me out.
Really?
Yeah. A year later, I was sick as a dog. I jumped on a train and didn't like to fly, and rode the rails back out to California.
Okay.
Wow.
And then it was.
Are we
great.
talking like you bought a ticket and rode the rails, or you like?
No, I
literally
bought
hopped?
a ticket.
Oh, okay.
It was legit.
Yeah, I was
legit.
say.
It would have been more fun if you were a
I would
hobo
have, but
going
I
through the towns.
didn't have the intestinal fortitude to pull
on
it
the road
off.
again.
Yeah, I'm
He's just
really
chasing down the.
kind of a wimp that way. So but riding a train for 3.5 days was awesome. And showed up in San Diego and went and lived with my grandparents who lived in El Cajon. And I boogie boarded every single day.
Nice.
Until I got, which I had done all my life anyway. But I did that until I went in the Navy. And in '82, I went in the Navy, and they promptly sent me to Orlando, Florida.
Wow.
And in Louisiana, it tore me up because I was allergic to everything that grew in the state. And the only thing I'm not allergic to is cactus, and it doesn't grow in the damn state.
Yeah.
Everything else does. I was allergic to molds, pollens. I was taking shots in my legs.
Those huge mosquitoes.
Oh my God. We got bit. I got bit by mosquitoes so bad in Louisiana I didn't itch. And then I got back to California, and then they have a different mosquito in California, and I got bit by one of those things, and it welted up. Yeah.
Wow.
Holy crap.
So in Louisiana, you get bit so much that it didn't bother you. Man, the fact the Cajuns will stand out there and they just get bit. They don't even care. Like, it just doesn't bother you.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Everything stings you or kills you there. Caterpillars sting you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, stinging caterpillars.
Like,
The hell?
why?
Who makes a stinging caterpillar? Why would you do that to people?
Your food's too good. I'm gonna have to level out the playing field.
We're gonna make this rough for you. I tell you, one thing they had besides a good culture and nice people was beignets.
Ooh.
Beignets are deadly. Man,
I only know what a beignet is because of the animated movie Princess and the Frog.
They are,
and they like stuff them down their throat. And I've always been like, man, those look good.
Those are so good. And I've eaten them right at the Café du Monde in New Orleans, right down in the French Quarter. My favorite place was a place called Coffee Call, which is a little tiny hole in the wall in Baton Rouge, and it was just. And as a matter of fact, when the last time I was down there, my brother immediately, like I got off the plane and he took me right to a place that served beignets. Like
Nice.
that's the first thing he did. So
Is it worth
Priorities.
going to New Orleans and seeing that
Yes.
town?
yes, Louisiana's worth seeing. Period.
Yeah.
You're all of the southern states are worth seeing.
Sure.
All of them. They really are. I make a lot of fun of the South.
Right.
I don't want to go back and live there unless I have to. But honestly, it's there's so much culture and there's so much heritage and history
Right.
there.
Yeah.
It's said something. Virginia's the same way.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just, I mean, that
absolutely.
is it. That's the epicenter of
Yeah.
of
Where it
history.
all started.
Yeah.
I've been at Jamestown multiple times.
Yeah, that's
and
the place, man.
Williamsburg.
Well, there we
yeah, all
go. We
those.
just need them to come invite us to their place to do like a talk or something.
Like a
Then we can-
podcast.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can go travel there and do
Oh,
a show
the
there.
history podcast.
Yeah, go visit Nova, CIEC headquarters.
So I joined the military and went to Orlando and then Pensacola, and I in the process I was an electronic warfare technician, which was a guy who looks at radars and interprets what they are.
Right.
Because you don't know anything about what the hell you're going to do. I mean, I knew what I was going to be, but I didn't know what that was.
Right. Yeah.
And go through school, and I just fell in love with this job. I couldn't believe it. And there were two sides to what you did. You either operated or fixed.
Okay.
And
okay.
and some of us did both. I mean, you had to do both, but
Yeah.
but some were better fixers than operators. I was a much better operator than a fixer to begin with because I was like the equipment was old
Okay.
and
okay.
janky, and the guys I was with on that ship were far superior technicians than what I'd ever be working on that equipment. It wasn't until I went back to school and really picked up the next NEC, Naval Enlistment Code, that's when the tech side of me really came out.
Nice.
So I operated to begin with and did some basic technical work, but nothing like these guys did. They trained me how to be an operator. On my first ship was on the USS Denver, which was an LPD, and the guys I was with really trained me, and that's where the capacitors came from. So so it started off with this guy. I come walking in the shop, in the ops office, and this and one of the two characters I did a lot of time with out to sea with Tom Cockrell was his name. He had a megameter, which puts out about 300 or 600 volts. I think ours
Right.
is 300 volts. And he goes, "Hey man, hold these leads." Okay. And then they crank the handle, and it, and of course that is, you don't want to put voltage across your heart, but in the Navy, no one cared. So, I screamed. I don't think I wet myself at that point, but it should have, because it hurt that hard. And he goes, "I'm sorry. What we've been doing is charging up these things. Here, have a capacitor." And he threw me a capacitor. That hurt. So then we were on a rampage to charge capacitors and chase people around the
Right,
ship
yeah.
with them, which
Oh
we
my God.
just terrorized the operations. The guys who operate the radars are called OSs, Operations Specialists.
Yeah.
They're the real scope dopes.
My recruiter.
They try to get you. Oh, he was an OS?
Lion OS.
Lion Weasel. We terrorized the OSs. The ETs were way too bright. They knew what a capacitor was,
Right.
but the OSs didn't. And they did after we shocked the hell out of all of them. But then it was elaborate schemes on how to hide them. The best was we got a guy whose gimmick was anytime you had an open bag of anything, he would walk in, and if you walked through combat with an open bag of anything, chips, goldfish, whatever, he would just run across there and just pound his hand in there and pull out a handful. Go, thanks. That
Yeah.
was his game. So
Yeah.
we threw a bunch of capacitors into goldfish. Walked right up on the DRT, which is a big table that they do tracing on.
Right.
And Tom and I both had some goldfish in our hands, and we just set it up on the DRT. And it took this guy like a second to go, "Thank you, don't mind if I do," and reaches in there. And I don't know how many capacitors he hit, but it rained goldfish. And he screamed, "I can't feel my arm!" And we were laughing so hard that I mean, I can still remember. Everybody just busted up and laughed and fell on the ground. It was, that's the kind of ship it was. It was unreal. So yeah, we
Did he
we
learn
had
his
a lot of
lesson though?
fun.
Did he stop putting his hands in things?
I don't think he could teach OS3 West anything. He was a good guy though. Don't come hurt me. But no, he was funny. Everybody had their own.
Right. Yeah.
Going out to sea is a you don't realize when you're out to sea that you can only, if your ship is 600 feet long, you can only get 600 feet away from the guy you hate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's it. And
Yeah.
and you hate everybody. Especially when you first get out to sea, you're like, I can't stand any of you people.
Yeah.
And then you realize that these are your shipmates and that they're hoping that you don't fall asleep on watch.
Right. Yeah.
And vice versa. And the team building starts to begin.
Sure.
And then you realize that, this is it. This is the real deal. And, you could really die out here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I just listened to like a 6-hour thing on the USS Indianapolis.
Oh, bad day. Bad day.
Yeah, bad day to not be in a fleet or a carrier group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know the story of the Indianapolis, it got sunk.
By Japanese torpedo
by a
boat.
Japanese torpedo. And
That was at Pearl Harbor, right?
No, it was
no.
after the bombing of Hiroshima, or it was not.
It brought the bomb. It brought components over to put the bomb
okay.
together that
Thank
they
you.
bombed Hiroshima.
What
with.
was the big ship at Pearl Harbor that sank? Wasn't there like one that's
the
like
Arizona?
The Arizona, that's what it is. Okay, yeah. That was the one where like they
It's
were
still
working on it
there
for
and-
like days and trying to get people out.
They were working on almost all of them. All the big battleships.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they almost all of them. There was a few that made it, but all of them sunk to one degree or another.
So
And
why is the Arizona kind of the one that
the
sticks in people's
magazine
mind?
blew up on it and it sunk? And
I see.
there was no recovering it. With the other
Yeah.
ones they could recover. The Arizona was unrecoverable, and it had the largest loss of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's right there. I mean, you can see it. Like,
Yeah.
It still leaks oil, and
It's still leaking oil.
Wow.
it always leaks. It has fuel oil on it, stuff like that.
Why can't they get that out?
I don't think they want to now because it's a memorial. They just deal with it.
Oh, wow.
Plus, I think so many fish live in that too. It would destroy a whole ecosystem.
Well,
really.
I mean more like if it's leaking oil, then there's obviously a storage place of oil, right?
There's a lot of storage places of oil. It could be,
and they
it could
can't
be
just
one of
they
half
can't access that.
No, it was so bad when Pearl Harbor was hit. The oil was so thick, and it was everywhere,
Yeah.
and that sailors were completely covered in it. It was awful, and it's not like diesel like they use today. It was
right.
bunker C. Nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Not
gonna use
good.
not gonna use Dove soap to wash it off.
No.
No, there was no Dawn back
Yeah, I
then.
was gonna
That's what
say,
it is.
I think you meant Dawn.
Yeah.
soap.
Yeah, they definitely weren't using Dove.
Dove.
Like,
The moisturizer.
come here, sailor. This will keep your hands soft.
But I tell you that the Navy made me what I am. It made me the technician that I am, and it took. I was in for almost 9 years, and I was at 8 years and 9 months, and it took 8 years and 9 months for me to really. And I didn't realize what it had done until I was out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once I got out, and I was fixing photocopiers, and I was working with an Air Force guy. It was a bunch of technicians that had all came out of the military, and we all were looking for work, and we couldn't
Right.
get anything. I was working with an Air Force guy who was super bright, and then another guy, like former Navy guy, and I realized that these technicians were like, I couldn't do what they were doing.
Right.
Like I was not that goddamn good.
Right.
It just wasn't. And I thought, man, what the hell? How am I gonna, And then I leaned back on some of that training and realized that, I had the skill sets. I just
Right.
I couldn't apply it.
I'm just in the wrong field.
I'm just in the wrong field. Well, and true to form, I got pretty good at fixing them. I mean,
Yeah, right.
got really good at fixing them, but it was just like, this isn't a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And I was really directionless until my neighbor said, come fix time clocks with me.
Oh.
Like, get out of copiers, get out of fixing meter copiers is what I was working on at that point. Come fix time clocks. What could possibly go wrong with that? Shit. what's a time clock, right? So I'm working in this shop, and these fire guys are just laughing at me every time they come through because I'm just beating my head against a wall trying to do this chemical cleaning of time clocks. I mean, it was really solvents and
Right.
Sure.
and then I got into a big fight with the person I was working with, and then one of the guys just said, "You want to come out in the field and learn fire?" And I'm like, "Boy, do I!"
Yeah. Right.
That sounds great. What's
Sign
fire?
me up. Check, please.
Don't even care what it is. Just
God.
yes, let's go.
What could possibly go wrong? So I went out in the field, and it was Jim Zeleny and Mike Nat.
What
both from
year was
Simplex.
that?
That would have been 1994.
Okay, I think I think I've seen some panels from around that those years, and that's not easy work to work on.
No,
Like,
4208s, 4206s, 4208, Simplex 4208s were common.
Yeah.
2001s, which had modules that you could plug in and out.
Yeah.
And the 4100s were out. But, you worked on a 4100 was a great day. But for the most part, we worked on a lot of older equipment and,
Right.
and competitive stuff.
Okay.
I
okay.
went to a job one time where they were freaking out. There was something was coming in and out, and it was going on runaway or possible runaway with our radio, and so I went out and checked it, and they're like, yeah, it came in as someone pulled a fire alarm pull station, but nobody did. I was like, okay, so I go and I'm like, where's the panel at? And they show it to me. And I just wanted to do a reset, like do a quick reset and it'll be fine. But I look at this panel and it's so old. I'm like, where's the reset
Where's the
button?
button?
And it
Also-
turns out it's not a button. It was like a full lever.
What?
It was like this,
What?
not a full, I made it look bigger with
Yeah.
this. But it was like, I had to like press it down with my thumb of like, it was like Jurassic Park, in Jurassic Park where
Yeah.
the chigung, it was just like that. It was like chigung, and then it reset and then it stayed. It didn't pop back up. And I was like, I think I did my job. It's not coming back. So,
That needs to be in a museum.
yeah, it was old. I think it's probably the oldest one I've ever touched.
Yeah.
And it came back up.
No, it stayed down. It was fine.
Okay.
Get up again.
Yeah. I get scared to do that with access control panels. You reset our stuff, and it's older than 10 years, it might not come back up. And
That is
usually
scary.
Oh, really?
won't. Yeah. Like you have to, like when you start looking at like old access control panels, like you have a motherboard with you.
Were
if
you
you're gonna
asking,
reset
did it come back up as far as operating?
Yeah, online.
Yeah, the panel came back up.
Right.
It worked just fine. I thought you meant did the problem come back up? No, it fixed itself.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. And it was probably a 25, 26-year-old panel.
Yeah, super
That's
old as
older
far as
than
the
that,
industry.
probably.
Yeah.
I can't even say what kind of panel it was. The way you're describing it, I could probably figure it out, but I'm like,
The whole
I should have
system was
taken a
knob and
picture.
tube.
Honestly, I should have.
yeah. Well, there was some old stuff out there, Standard and Simplex and Gamewell. Some of those guys, those companies have been around since the 40s and 50s. So I mean, like Standard especially. Like we have a building where I work at that's got Standard in it, an old Standard panel. It's just nothing, but it's got old ceramic resistors.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
like it gets hot. you know?
It's always an interesting conversation when you show up for like a service call or something,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you look at the panel and you're like, all right, I figured out what the problem is. What? Your panel. You need to just get a new panel, man. This thing is so old.
This thing's janky.
No, you show up and the guy's smiling. You're like, hey, what's up? And he's like, you're gonna like this one.
Yeah, I love that. I love that when you first show up and the guy goes, or you're like their savior and you walk in there and go, I can't fix this thing. This thing
Yeah.
is just too far gone. Who
This is
sold you
gonna
this?
cost you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that to me was like when I was in the Navy, I like, okay, my equipment the problem could be here, it could be on the mast, it could be in in the equipment room. I've got all these different places it could be. And then I worked on photocopiers. It's like the problem is right here.
Yeah,
It is
right.
between. It's a 4-foot by 2-foot block of crap, and now I'm back to okay.
It could
it's
be
a
in
22
somewhere
story
in this building,
It's
yeah.
got a problem is somewhere in this building. Oh my
Better
God.
grab a ladder.
And I like the once I figured it out, once I figured out fire alarm systems and you know, I had a lot of people coaching and it's like, and all of a sudden all the gears started piecing together. They all started fitting together. Mm-hmm. And then I went, oh my God, this is all the same.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter, you know, what I'm working on.
There's a fundamental, you know, how it works is always right there.
And the Navy's teaching, well, you know, the Navy's teaching is so good.
Right.
That when they teach you something, you know it. You know it backwards, forwards, up, down, left, right, in the dark.
and if you don't, it's incredible. Like you go into these like mechanic shops and it's like, even if you don't remember, you know, half your A school, because we went through a year auto course in 3 months, like you could look at like the wall and it's just like for every section, there's like a binder that's like dummy proof that could walk you through anything you could possibly need to do to that vehicle.
Yep.
That's crazy.
It's idiot proof.
It's incredible how like organized it is.
They had PMS when you were in, right? The PMS system?
Yeah.
Yeah. The PMS system I thought was a joke when I first got in there because there's these cards and you have to follow them exactly as they're written.
Yeah.
If you don't, that's called gun decking and they will disembowel you or something. I don't know what it's
something
bad.
like that.
Whatever it is bad. So you follow all these rules and you're like, I'm going to take the equipment apart. I'm going to take a little brush and I'm going to brush all the crap out and all this stuff. But, you know, you open up the equipment, there's no dust in it. Like, there's no dust in it.
Right.
You never opened up a piece of my equipment, not mine, but our equipment that had dust in it. It just flat, it was always clean. The filters were always clean.
Yeah.
Like, then I get out and I'm civilian.
Right.
And I opened up stuff, and it's like, what the hell happened?
So disgusting.
Yeah.
How is this not on fire?
Is this human skin? I'm not touching this.
We got a corpse body in here.
Nice.
Thank you.
But the other thing I liked was I thought, when I was a copier guy, I thought, well, I could go, as I was working in a manual and all these different places, and I could go look for another job while I'm doing this copier thing.
Right.
What could, you know, maybe I'll find something I like. And I got exposure to all these different companies. And then when I became a fire guy, I wound up doing a lot of work in different companies and then seeing what those companies did and then going, wow, this could be. It's one of the reasons I like working in hospitals is once I worked in a hospital over and over and over again, I went, I like this environment. This is for me.
Yeah.
You know?
I do all the legacy hospitals from Salem to Vancouver.
So you know all of those facilities.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I walk in there and they see me and they're like, yep, he knows where everything is.
Yeah. and like Emmanuel, like I worked Emmanuel, Good Samaritan Emmanuel, Mount Hood Medical, and Meridian Park. Those were the 4 biggies that they had.
Right.
2 were union, 2 were non-union. And so,
okay.
So the Meridian Park and Mount Hood Medical were non, and Legacy Emmanuel and Good Samaritan were. I mean, the for the facilities folks, and I knew all the facilities people. I knew all the directors. I knew the ins and outs. You know, and I knew I loved it. I mean, just like Emmanuel itself was just like, wow. You know, you're in the surgeries. You're the morgue. You're like,
and that the basement is like 3 blocks long.
It's crazy
and connects. Like
all
that huge
together.
campus,
Yeah, everything. You can go from, matter of fact, if there's a body in the basement, you probably ought not like ask what they're there for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's bad.
Yeah.
And that whole scene, you know, like where you learn what a hospital is all about, and now, you know, the one I work at now is, of course, just mammoth as compared to like Emmanuel. It's just mammoth, man.
Really?
Oh, OHSU is huge.
Oh,
it's huge.
That is a unit, an absolute unit.
Yeah, it is, and it of all the places I've ever worked, it has been the most intriguing and I even on my retread, I'm back there again. I still am in awe sometimes of how big the place is and just how many different things are happening.
Just stop and appreciate it, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Not to change the subject, but I'm listening to you talk about your history and where you went, and going back to the episode that you did, our first episode where you went from DC to daylight, or really to cosmic rays. I was just thinking while you were doing that, is this stuff that you like? Did you sit down and go, I want to learn all of what's between, the lowest frequency to the highest frequency, or is this just stuff that you kind of put together, and then slowly this whole lecture that you have was put together because you're interested in it?
Both. When I was in the military and I was looking at radars, they taught us all the stuff about the radars. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
But they didn't teach any of the communication stuff. So you get to the lower end of the equipment spectrum, and you would pick up these communications. I didn't know what the hell they were. I didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
And I knew how to use the radios we had and all that good stuff, but I didn't really understand. Like the modulation was the big one. Like why? How is this machine talking to this machine?
Yeah.
What am I missing here?
Yeah.
Well, in subsequent ships that I went on and subsequent commands, one of them was a command that had a lot of radio gear, and so then I was trained on working on HF radios and VHF radios, and now that opened up a whole spectrum I didn't know about, and so some of the
real quick, what is VHF?
Well, VHF is a band. So we look at like HF would be the lowest part. Well, not the lowest part, but HF stands for high frequency, and then above that would be very high frequency, and above that would be ultra high frequency, and then it keeps going higher and higher because they kept finding more frequencies and going ultra super special high frequency. They didn't have any other names for crap,
right?
So it's all screwed up. So we worked in these. I worked almost exclusively in the SHF bands, the really super high bands. But when I worked at this last command, we actually had to do VHF, UHF, and HF.
Oh, okay.
And so that was our world was working in those bands and those radios. I only worked on a couple of the radio sets, but I worked on some pretty cool equipment, and I got to operate a lot of the equipment. And then I started learning more about and the more I learned about the communication side of the house, the more I thought, okay, the pieces I'm missing, I'll pick up eventually. And I picked up most of those missing pieces after I got out of the military, just in studying and trying to understand and then once I became a ham radio operator, it became then, especially when computers and ham radios merged, you were like, oh my God, I can look at it. I can listen to all this crap now. I can listen to all of it. I can decipher it. I can figure out what it is. And there's now databases out there. Artemis is a good example of a database that you can actually look at all of the different modes that are transmitted and see how they work. Like how the computers talk to each other. Like you're like, holy cow.
That would be actually wild to see.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Because to me, to see a machine talk to another machine is still jaw dropping.
Yeah.
I know
it's
that
magic.
I know my computers can do
exactly.
it. Yeah, it's magic. It really, really is. So now, the more I got into radios and understood what they're going on, the more I realized that every single thing we're dealing with started from modulation techniques that they used in communicating back and forth.
Right.
And then eventually it was pre-radio, then radio, and now it's everything.
Yeah.
And then I went, oh my God, this all connects. And then so when I started giving that lecture, I wiped out the first week and changed it to just giving that lecture.
Sure.
To introduce all the students to a new way of thinking.
Yeah, and it really is. I know that was a big moment for me. When I was going through the apprenticeship, I had taken at least one class, if not two, before yours, where it was like
couple. Yeah.
Where it was like introduction to the apprenticeship. You show up with your tools and don't not go to work, sort of thing. And,
basically,
here's the rule: don't not go to work.
And then we get to your class, and at this point, I'm like 9 months into it, and I'm hoping that this is going to pay off. And every day I'm going to work and I'm just drilling holes in the wall and stuff, and
Just for fun.
Until they tell me to stop, and then
Drywallers are pissed.
my journeyman's yelling at me. Everyone's yelling. I'm just doing work. Like I don't know even what I'm doing.
Right.
And then we get to your class, and that first week you introduce yourself, and then you do exactly what people can listen to on our first episode. You just go through and you explain why. Mm-hmm. Why is that? How does this work, and why does it work? And that was probably the first time someone really did that for me, where it was like, this is the important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This is why you need, why we do what we do.
The why.
And from that point on, I just kept asking question after question after question after question. And I finally got to a journeyman with where I'm at now. And he was like, you need to start asking why. And I was like, I thought I was. He's like, not enough. And so he pushed me even more. And that is, I think, the absolute foundation of learning this trade is, you can teach anybody how to drill a hole through studs and pull wire. But understanding why you're pulling that wire, where you're pulling it to, and what's the purpose of it, that's going to make a good tradesman. That's going to make it.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was when I realized that I loved my job, because it's like before, like Tyler said, you're 9 months in, you got your little tweaker, you're like landing wires that have already been pulled for you.
Yeah.
You just
All
land
you
into
do is terminate, and you're like, this is dull.
Like, normally closed, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And then you take like the first actual class, which is your class, and it's just like, wow, I'm kind of the shit. Not really for a couple more years, but
Yeah.
it was like, wow, I am really,
And the idea in the military, well, in the Navy for us was when I was learning electronic warfare, one of the guys that was probably the top operator on my first ship would just pummel me when I got it wrong. I mean, pummel. I mean, when you picked up the microphone and you transmitted to another ship, if you screwed up, like you were going to get hit with a book. I mean, that's the way he was. That's the angst that he brought to the fight. It really put me on my game. Like I really had to, and I had a good chief there too, who kind of helped me sort of piece things together.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got to my second ship that I realized what I had learned from my first ship.
right.
And that I was, there's a little bit of a difference here in the way that I operate. By the time I left that second ship and I got to my third and my fourth, I was like, oh my God, I'm picking up everything that they're laying down, and I'm starting to realize what's going on. And I had met enough good instructors in the Navy that could instill in almost anybody the desire to figure it out. Like they were putting the onus on you. And the top instructor I ever had was a guy who seriously taught me digital theory in about 20 minutes one night, because I was completely vapor locked on it after 16 weeks of not understanding it, and he unlocked it for me in 20 minutes. And I said, what this guy, the way this guy teaches is what I'm going to do.
Nice.
And I stole his shit.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. Excuse me for fresh, but that's what I took.
I think I did it earlier too.
He literally was it. I mean, I had the guy re-enlist me. I mean, honest to God, that's how good he was.
That's awesome.
And so I went back and as I tried to teach my own operators, why we're doing this, you would always run into these guys who didn't want to do it. Like they didn't want to be a part of the team. Like they just didn't care.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. And even today I'll run into someone. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's appreciated, but the rest of us do care.
Yeah. So I'm gonna focus on them, and I'm gonna focus on me. So
exactly. And so that was running with that instilling, like, how can I get somebody motivated to learn this from organically, like where they want to know more. And part of that for me was to like for example, on the simplex systems, I wanted to, when I was working at OHSU the first time, I wanted to know how the smokeheads talked to the cards? How did the MapNet cards? What is MapNet 2, which is the protocol, and how does it work? And so I went to the patent office and I pulled down the patent and I read it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh crap, that's how that works.
Devoted.
So then there was a guy's name on there, and I went, this engineer, I wonder if he can. Oh, there's the engineer, and he's still in Boston. Oh, he's working for this other company. Well, there's his number. Hey, I had a question for you. And he goes,
he really is going for Randy. I just realized that he can do it.
Honest to God,
he's gonna find it.
I call this guy up and I go, hey, do you mind? I told him who I was. I said, do you mind if I ask you a question about MapNet? And he went, whoa. That was like,
dang, son, where'd you find this?
I was like 30 years ago. He goes, what's your question? So I asked him some questions on it, and he went, yeah. And he explained it because he's an engineer. Engineers are, he explained what I was missing. And I went, thank you. And he went, yeah. You can hear him on the other end going, what the hell just happened?
Is this a fever dream that I'm having right now?
Did I take peyote? What's going on? So, so then I could look up the protocol, and the Edwards signature, their SLC is called signature. I forget. It's not on the tip of my tongue, but they have their own protocol for their SLC and how it works, and they're almost all the same.
Yeah.
And so I just went, oh, wow, you could figure out the data. To me, it was just like, once I figured out that data are being moved and how the data sets are being moved and how this is basically a database in a UL listed PLC with databases that all have to match what's in the field. Oh, well, this is not unlike any other database system, right? Piece of cake. So
I'm actually glad you did kind of branch back into the Navy, because one thing I have to bring up from your first episode, the chain home ran off the high frequency band. Can you elaborate on that? Because that sounded super interesting.
Okay, so they were wooden masts that had horizontal wires strung between them, and the British would send out these pulses with the HF radio, and then they would look at the returns. So they didn't do it manually. It was an automatic system.
Okay.
But then they had a scope that would indicate where the transmitted pulse was, and then a length of time before the received pulse. Now, this is all happening at roughly the speed of light. So you're able to synchronize the scope to match the actual distance away that the aircraft was. So you had these sets that were aimed in different quadrants or different angles, and then they could compare all of the different where they were receiving the strongest signals, in which quadrant. And of course, the Germans would often fly, from the same couple of airfields, so then that's where they'd concentrate their energies. Yeah. And then they would just piece it all together, and you can see some of the bunkers. You can obviously look at it all on Wiki. You can see the bunkers were operated by men and women who showed on a big flat table where the squadrons were, what squadrons they had available, and how they would muster them out there. And so oftentimes the Spitfires, the Hawkers, would actually meet the bombers as they were coming across the channel. Wow. That's the best place to meet them.
Yeah.
But then when they couldn't get there in time, then they would meet them over the United Kingdom itself.
That's so crazy.
Well,
man.
the best part is that they had to deceive the Germans. There was times when the Germans figured out that, okay, obviously the British know we're coming. So then they had other systems that they would fly between two markers, and they would hear dashes on one marker and dits on the other. And when they heard a solid tone, they knew they were over the target, and then they would drop their bombs.
Wow.
And so the British then built a system to counteract that.
Yeah.
And so then the Germans built another system, and then the British developed a system to counteract that. That's where electronic warfare got its start from.
They studied the manatee.
Manatee man.
And and the radar was actually an accident, right? Because they were trying to learn how to shoot radio waves to knock the German planes out of the air.
That was the original idea, yeah.
And then they were like, wow, I mean, this is kind of just as useful. This is better, actually. This is better.
Yeah, I think the guy was Watt. I think it's who it was, and he literally, when they were trying to figure out a way to make a ray.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, this ain't working, but you know what is working? you could see the thing. What the hell? What's going on? And that's when they could hear the echo.
Yeah.
This became, as you look at the science of like radar, for example, they did this one time where they were shooting what is now considered 2-meter frequencies, 144 megahertz and that around. They were shooting a target and they hit something. And when they did the calculation on it, they went, it's 126,000 miles away. The only thing that's that far away is the moon. We can't possibly be hitting the moon. And then the engineers went, we're hitting the moon. And that is how Earth, Moon, Earth transmission started, was because an accidental radar transmission hit the moon. They came back and said,
I was just out there
so
just shooting rays out of space.
And
Cheers to the first guy to put his hand up, like, high five. This is kind of cool.
I think we hit the moon. Get out.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what it was. And then they realized that, certain frequencies would stay in the earth and other frequencies would go out. And during different times of day, some frequencies will go out and some frequencies can't. And then and that's literally how they did it. And we still bounce radio signals off the moon.
Yeah.
So the people do carrier wave, CW, bounce signals off the moon and then come back down to earth and then talk to people on the other side of the globe. They do it all the time.
Wow.
So if the moon's up, there's somebody transmitting off. They're called EME.
That is incredible.
Yeah, ham radio guys are nuts, man. We all find our little niches, plural, and then like I do mine, and I'll have my big fatty radio up, and I'll be playing with all the knobs and dials, and I'm just like geeking out on it and stuff. And my wife is completely not interested.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. And I'll like play some audio. I'm like, well, this guy is in like Canada, like way northern Canada or Japan. Like this guy is transmission. So some guy in Japan is talking to me, and I'm talking back, and I have less than 100 watts of power. So a 100-watt light bulb has as much power as I have.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to him.
Do you ever like point it at the moon and like kind of call your shot? You're like this one's for Berlin, Kobe.
No, I don't have any of that equipment, but I
Gage, what the hell, man?
Oh man, I don't. No, I would like to, but I do have a lot of.
Dang, it was France.
I heard that.
I'm French.
It's a like there's always different little subdivisions that you get caught in.
Okay.
And I mine is like HF radio. So I have a big long antenna I put in my backyard, and I love antennas. Like antennas are like porn to me. I go, look at that one.
Look how big that one is.
That's really cool.
So shiny. He takes really good care of that.
And, well, I'll look at them and I'll go, that's for that frequency band, and that's how that works, and or I'll know that brand or whatever. And my dad thought I was crazy, man. I look at a radar antenna and go, how does that thing work? And he's like, oh my god. And my first Russian ship I ever went on was in San Diego, and when I looked at my slides, it were all of frickin' radars. I couldn't believe. I'm like looking at my slides, going, what idiot would just go on a ship and just take pictures of all the goddamn radars?
I know, and their MPs are just sitting there like, are we allowed to let him do it?
Yeah.
I don't think he even knows what he's doing.
It was different. I knew, when I was in the military, I said, if I ever walk on board a Soviet ship in Port San Diego, my days in the Navy are done. And within a year, I stood on board to Sovremny DDG and shook hands with the sailors and went, my days are done. And I was out. By 91, I was out.
Wow.
I was done. All of the chasing of the Russians was over with.
Yeah.
And now maybe it's back. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother story.
They're just
now.
trying to sell toothpaste, I think.
Something.
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Trying to sell ad space for the newscasts. Well, I think that's going to be Gage. Unless you have more questions, or Mike, if you have questions for us, I think that's our show.
We probably should do this again. I'm sure that.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what. If you like what you hear on this podcast, then you need email halfwattpod@gmail.com. That's halfwattpod, HALFWATTPOD.
Yeah, we would love to take questions, especially for this segment. I mean, write them in if you have stories.
Yeah,
I mean,
not even questions, but like stories,
Yeah,
horror stories,
Right.
praises, funny stories, anything that we can share from you, our audience.
Naked pictures of Gage or Tyler.
Yeah,
They're
We'll
out
take
there.
those too.
They're out
They're
there.
out
consider
there.
this your shoot for the moon, hit Berlin, Kobe.
LeBron James.
Yes,
But this podcast is for you. It's
Yeah.
for our own people, our own kind, our own technicians, our own electricians, our own folks, everybody out there, right? This
Yeah,
is
just
for
anyone
you.
with an interest in electricity. And honestly, if you really do like the podcast, the best thing that you can do is share it with a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Tell them
important.
about it.
And if you have a question that Mike doesn't know the answer to, he'll call up the patent owner and force them to talk to us.
Even in the middle of the night. Hey, excuse me. Can I ask you? Hey, let me ask you something.
I got a podcast. I need you to talk to me.
Yo, my man. Let me ask you something.
You flew to Maine?
That engineer was he literally was like, I cannot believe. Hands on a patent.